All right. So I'm not gonna pull the curtain back too far, but I think we need to have a little reset. And the thing we need to reset on is, and we need to drive this point home because we're not doing a good enough job of it. When I say people buy from people, what do I mean by that? And I can already tell by your smirk. What do I mean by that, and why? But more importantly, why is that so important? Why do people buy from people, and what do I mean by it when I say that?
Well, it's the most basic concept of all time. But I think the big thing about it, and it's weird. I know that we've had conversations, and I've had to have this exact conversation 3 times in the last 17 hours. Shit's just different now. You don't get to hold people's attention ransom while they're watching Cheers at night or Seinfeld. Things are just different. You can no longer sell to people with advertising. You have to market to them and make them want to buy from you.
Yep.
That, in a nutshell, is what that means. You no longer, in 90% of cases, you no longer get to sell your shit to your customer. Those days are done. I'm not even saying they're changing anymore. They're done. It's over. You have to stop. The only thing that your marketing, your branding, your advertising, your content creation, whatever buzzword you feel like using, your only responsibility with that is to act as if your business was a person and then make your customers want to be friends and do business with that person. That's the only job, the only task, the only thing you should be focusing on. And guess what? When you do it properly, you end up doing what you wanted to accomplish in the first place, AKA sell more of whatever you're selling.
Yep.
I needed to get that rant out so bad. I'm glad you asked that question.
Because it's relative to everything we talk about. It encompasses everything we talk about. Like if there's a pillar, I don't know if I just got kicked off of live or not. It looks like it's still streaming. I got an error message. Like if there's one pillar concept that you and I could preach, and apparently we don't say it enough, is people buy from people. They don't buy from box stores. They don't buy from conglomerations. Yes, I understand that you buy from Amazon, and everybody's on Amazon on their phone at 3:30 in the morning these days. I get all that, but you only use Amazon as a vessel to get what you want. You're still buying the little doggy bones from whatever, pets.com, because you saw a cute thing and they had a cute dog that looked like your dog. That's why you're buying dog bones from Amazon at 3:30 in the morning. But there was a human or animal or emotional or spiritual or some sort of connection that you had with that brand. You're not going to come out and say, here are buy this, it's $8.99. The moment you say, buy this, it's $8.99, you've lost. You've right hooked. And when you continue to right hook, the first thing you're going to do is unfollow.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently we don't say it enough. We need to say it more.
Well, I think the problem is that it's like anything. It's not hard to understand. It's not hard to believe. It's just hard to do. And I think that's the hang up for most people, where, I mean, what we do for a living, it's literally our job to talk about it nonstop. But when it comes time to actually do it, it requires a lot of talent and a lot of work and a lot of patience. And there's not a lot of things where people can put those three things together consistently.
Yep.
And be disciplined enough to stick with it, especially in the beginning when, like we always talk about, it's going to be a fuckload of work up front.
Yep.
It's going to be really hard. You're going to take a lot of punches to the face for literally no return. And if you don't have that level of faith and that level of discipline in it, you're just going to stop and you're going to go back to, hey, we're open. Here's our hours. Here's our specials. This is what they cost. Come buy it.
Our tasting room's open from 9 to 5.
Precisely.
And that's why the reason it's so hard is because that's what's so hard about brand. You invest and you invest and you invest and you invest, And a lot of times there's no quantifiable data that show you that it's working short term. You can't just pull up and say, okay, it's at day 67, how's my brand working? It's those unexplained opportunities of why somebody picks up the phone and calls you and says, hey, I was thinking about you yesterday. That's brand. When the president of, I'm gonna name drop here. When the president of Constellation Brands calls me on Monday personally and says, what cool stuff are you working on right now? And when one of those brands gets an offer sheet on Wednesday of this week, like, that's brand. That is years and years of investing in it with zero expectations of something happening, comma, guess what? Until something happens. Sorry, it's Event Friday apparently today.
Well, no, but I mean, that's the thing. Like, like anything, that's the longer you wait before asking for something, the more you get. It's just true in everything, in business, in life, in relationships, in you name it. You know, like I mean, we've talked about it. I don't remember if it was on the show or not. Like the last 2 clients we got straight up from that. Just people that I've been a resource to for the last 6 years.
Yep.
Never asked anything, never expected anything, nothing.
Yep.
Comes up, grants come in, whatever they need, anything that's remotely to my universe. Who's the first person they're going to call?
Love it. I love it. Rob, let's do a roll call here. Rob, Jason, David, Grammy checking in. Hello, Grammy. Dave, Kevin, our buddy Kevin Wall checking in. Thank you. Lauren and Emily, thanks everybody for checking in. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, please drop them here in the comments. We will get to them. Specifically, I had a buddy, realtor buddy of mine. His name's Jason. He's a big fan of the show. He's a podcaster himself. He's going through a little bit. Let me give a little context, and we'll get to his 2 to 3 questions. He's going through a little bit of a brand pivot himself. So he is a lifelong public service in the emergency services business for like 20, 25 years. He's been in fire companies before. He's done some really, really cool things. A few years back, he transitioned to the real estate world, and he's just crushing it. And he and I have been talking for about 3 or 4 months together. But what he wants to do, in addition to the real estate stuff that he does, and he gets listings all the time. The real estate market here in Central New York is still white hot. I love hearing from him every week about that kind of stuff. He wants to get into the brand consulting, the 30,000 foot strategy model of working with different businesses. So that's what he and I are kind of working on together, is how can we kind of pivot his content. He does a really good job on Instagram stories. He does a better job than I do about his workouts, how he lives his life, his camping, his kids, his family. And that was our call last week. He goes, how do I start incorporating my client services, my professional consulting services into my content? And I'll answer before I ask you the question. I said, you start incorporating it into your content. You start talking about those things. So yes, it's, hey, check out this live, this live walkthrough of, Lincoln Road here in Cazenovia. It's that, plus it's, hey, my friend asked me this question about my consulting, or asked me about how I would potentially work through a situation and brand myself. Then you simply get on the IG story after that and say, I just hung up the call with my buddy. Here's what we talked about, and here's what my advice was. So I'm sure it's similar advice, but what would you say?
Nike strategy. Just do it.
Yep.
That's, I think, the big thing. The one thing I would caution him against is I wouldn't try to, we had a big talk about this in here yesterday. Do one thing at a time. Don't try to push real estate stuff here. Then, oh, by the way, I'm also doing this. And then we had this with the consulting. Segment it. Let people know what you're trying to talk about, and I think that's kind of the big thing. And then from there, I would literally just start doing it. I would use your philosophy, and I'd call every person I know and see if they need what I'm deciding that I'm going to do. And I'd try to sell it. And then ideally you get 2 or 3 clients just from straight up grinding through that. And
Yep.
then your content is about exactly what you're doing for them.
Yep.
And then guess what? If you're good at what you're doing and then you document it, more people see that. And then they want to, and then they want to, and then so on and so on and so on. But I think that's the big thing, is just with that specifically, the more you can start doing it, especially if you're doing it while getting paid, if you have some amount of sales talent up front, which if you're working in real estate, I'm guessing you probably do. And then from there, start documenting that just like you did for the real estate business. And in his case, like we see all the time, be careful. Just don't say the same stuff that 95% of the bullshit artists are trying to say too.
Well, that's perfect. It's funny you say that because I didn't even give you the questions yet. That is a perfect segue. So he emailed me 2 or 3 questions. I think 2 of these can probably get translated into one. So we always talk about branding versus marketing versus sales strategy. How does the solopreneur, I always love that word, solopreneur, scale a business amid a crowded arena in terms of branding or marketing? So when you say that, what you just mentioned, can you expand on that to kind of answer his question?
So how would he expand what he's doing?
Yep.
Be in the top 5% of actual talented and hardworking individuals in that field. That's how you do it. Like it's everything just maps directly to that. Like if you want to be like one of the top 5% of like brand consultants in Central New York, be one. Be more talented than 95% of the rest of them. Work harder than 95% of the rest of them. Put out more content than 95% of the rest of them. And do it for a long time.
Yep. Those are the 2 pieces of information. This is going to be, Jason, you and I have already talked about this, so it's going to be redundant for you to hear. But the 2 strategies I would use are, when you feel yourself scrolling, stop scrolling and contribute to the platform. That's number 1. The moment you get into the mindless scroll, and we all do it, every day we all do it. We're going through the Facebook page. Instead of that, take a picture of where you are and talk about what you're feeling and talk about what you're experiencing or what the day was like or what you hope to accomplish for the day. That's number 1. Number 2, which I know he does. He started now to put out a lot more content. Number 2, the strategy I told him is send out those 30 to 50 messages a day. Text. So I'll ask you this. How many contacts do you have on your phone right now? Right now?
Me?
Yep.
I don't know. A lot.
So last time I checked, I had 2,100 contacts.
Over 1,000 for sure.
Yeah. So this is the strategy. This is the goal. This is the painting the Golden Gate Bridge strategy that I tell people. And if people don't know that story, it's a great story. There's a group of people that is specifically hired to paint the Golden Gate Bridge. So they start on the Oakland side. They paint the Golden Gate Bridge. It takes them 2 years, and then they have to go back when they finish, because it's taken them so long. They have to go back and start again. So this is the A to Z strategy that I told Jason. The indirect selling method is start with A on your phone and text that person and say, hey, it's Jason. It was great to see you at the barbecue last weekend. Here's what I'm up to. I'm doing a little bit of real estate stuff, but I'm trying to get into the professional consulting world. Do you have anybody in your network that could use my services? Start with A, go to Z. When you're done with Z, go back to A. Because here's the punchline. I know it's redundant, but people need to hear this again. You're not going to get to J in your contact list before you have more business than you know what to do with. Then, if you need to biz dev, you mark down on a piece of paper and say, I left off with J in my contact list. Anytime you feel yourself scrolling and you want to biz dev and you want more business in the door, you start A, then you start biz deving again. Those are the 2 pieces of advice I would give to you.
I think those are phenomenal pieces of advice, especially, like I said, just starting out, to get a couple under your belt and to get something going so that you have something to talk about. One of the biggest pet peeves that I have that drives me absolutely fucking crazy are people that are professional consultants or run cutting edge social media agencies, countless clients, which, oh, by the way, it's very easy to count because it's fucking 0. So that's just the one thing right there. Like, just don't be one of them. So like, the faster you can do exactly what you're saying and start getting out there and getting into It's also occurred to me every time we say the word biz dev, that's just a fancy word we say for selling whatever you're selling. It was brought to my attention the other day that that's not an overly known term outside of the business world. So for future reference, when you hear biz dev, that's just us being nerds saying selling whatever you're selling.
That's just us trying to be cool. Call it what it is. Biz deving and syncing up and all these stupid buzzwords that we use these days.
Selling your shit. That is what.
All right, last question for Jason. Brian, Buddy Joe, good to see you. Beth Ann, that's a good piece of tack on advice. She follows up every lead. I mean, if somebody's going to take the time to reach out to you, you need to take the time to reach back out to them. Like, this is a two-way street. This is an open line of communication, right? So his last question, Jason, what is the best? This is a tough one. What is the best ad spend with the best ROI? You're going to hate this question, but turn it into whatever you want.
I love this question. Because the answer is very simple. The answer has everything to do, like we always say, it's not about you, it's about your customer, right? Where are your customers?
Yep.
That's where your best ad spend is. You know, if you're trying to hit people 35 and up, I'd spend everything on Facebook. If you're trying to hit people 20 and under, I'd be on Instagram and pray that TikTok doesn't get banned by the government. You know, that's going to be the answer. It will forever be the answer. 12 years from now, it'll be completely different. But you have to, everything you do, from ad spends to the style of your content to how you're writing your captions, has to be done with your end customer in mind. Going back to the whole people buy from people thing, to really put a bow on this. If someone's going to buy from you, that's a two-way street, just like you said. Where, like, if you and I had nothing in common, we wouldn't be doing this show. Right? So, like, you have to have something in common with your end customer if they're going to buy from you on that level, especially on any kind of like consulting basis, because they have to be like, yep, this is one of my people. This is one of my dudes. We get each other. I trust him.
Yep.
So that's the thing, you know, and like, so if, like I said, if I'm trying to target you, I'm going to spend way more money on Facebook. If I'm trying to hit Taven, I'm probably not spending anything on Facebook. That's probably all Instagram story and YouTube pre-roll.
Yep.
So it's going to change based on who you're trying to hit and what you're trying to do.
When you talk about copy, I think that's something we don't talk about very often. When you write copy, number one, what do you mean by that term for people that are unaware? Why is it so important? And how do you write it? You know, how do you write copy sitting in your customer's shoes and saying, this is what I want to hear? And do you think most people write it for what we want from it? We put our own self-interest in mind when we're writing our copy, say, our customer needs to know this. They need to know this. They need to know this. They need to know this. How do you approach copy, and why is it so important?
It's the whole, like, the same reason that how someone talks to you is important. The same reason that, like, when we sit down in a meeting, like we did on Wednesday, and our prospective client drops 3 F-bombs in the first 10 minutes, I'm like, fuck yeah, this is one of my people. And we're on the same level instantly. You know, whereas there's other people, I wouldn't do that with in a million years. Your copy, which by the way is just the caption on whatever post you're putting out, you should put out a whole dictionary on just business jargon. But that's the thing, you know, using you and Taven is the same example. You are going to have a way different vernacular and tone and straight up vocabulary than Taven is. How I always explain it to people is you should act as if you were in a text message conversation with whoever you're trying to talk to.
That's interesting.
That's how I try to communicate to people. You're not writing your senior thesis. You're not getting graded on grammar. You know, no, like, that's just not how people behave wherever you are.
Yep.
Like, if you're writing a Facebook post, write it like you write a Facebook post. If you're on LinkedIn, you have to be a little bit more professional, no problem. But, like, tweak it so that it fits that. So that's what we do for our people. Absolutely. You know, we have a client in-house where, like, our main demo that we're trying to target is like females 16 to 40. I'm writing that much different than I'm writing it for a restaurant downtown, or I can't say it, e-commerce website or something like that. I know that I can't say it though.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. And then to answer the second part of that, nobody does that. Everybody writes it for what I want you to know. I've decided I want you to know this information about us.
Yep.
And that's why 90% of people are leaving a lot of money on the table because they're just not doing it right.
Well, I'll pull the curtain all the way back so this is how Adam and I book this show every Friday. He texts me about an hour before the show, and at 10:43 this morning, it is, "You good for show today?" ? My response is, totally. I have 3 questions teed up from a realtor friend. Adam responds, "Dope," and then I send him a Zoom invite. That is how it happens. So
yeah,
if you can,
to be perfectly candid, that's way more planning than we usually even have. That's a big step up for us.
Usually it's a quarter to 12. Be like, "Good, you good?" Good.
Then a thumbs up emoji back, and then that's it.
Thumbs up emoji. Which, to your point, if you're whatever you're in, if you're a realtor and you have if you have a set of emojis that you do, like for me, I've noticed this. Somebody called me out on this the other day. It's the classic, their term, not mine. It's the classic Ben Riley response where two crying smiley faces, and then two of these. That's what it is every single time. And I don't know, it's just what I do. So if you're the realtor guy, or if that's how you talk to your friends, like if the response is, "Hey, you good? I'm good. Dope." Like that's how you should talk about personal branding and getting to know somebody. People buy from people. They're going to buy from you doing this.
100. We text too much. I was going to try to find that in our text conversation, but I'm like, that's only a day. like that's just literally little Michelle Tanner gifs. Like that's just what like it works though. And like that's how I explain, like, well, that's not professional. We can't do that. I'm like, fuck off. Yes, you can. Like, and if you look, like, it's so platform dependent. Like, remember when everybody thought Wendy's was genius because they would just roast people on Twitter all day, every day?
Yes.
Revolutionary. And now that's all people do on Twitter. Just talk shit to other people and other brands. Because that's what that platform is.
Yep. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that's so funny. If you want to talk in, by the way, it's GIF, not GIFs for those on the record. But you want to talk, you want to talk in GIFs.
Nobody fucking knows what it is.
Something in the water today. Everybody's in a punchy mood that I've come across today. I like it. I totally lost what I was going to say. Somebody drop a question in the comments, please. Jack, Beth Ann, Trisha, Kristen, Chris, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. When you do get to the point, let me take it here. When you do get to the point where you do have opportunities coming in, you are, selling your stuff or biz deving properly, how do you go about analyzing each opportunity and making sure it's the best use of your time? Let's talk about a little about time management a little bit. How do you do that, and what would you tell people?
I think a lot of people would argue that I still haven't figured that out. But I mean, it's just experience. I think one thing, with me, I'm the opposite. I give people too much time all the time.
Yeah, me too.
So, because I mean, for me, it's all how risk averse are you? Or, even to a certain extent, just your level of optimism and self-confidence. Because there's a lot of people, back in the phase of life when we had more partners involved here, I had drastically different approaches to that, where certain people would make up 39 reasons why somebody would say no before we even talk to them. Whereas you just learn. And I think that's where like getting comfortable with speed is really your friend.
What do you mean by that? That's a really important point.
Where people will spend so much time. If say you have a list of 10 prospects you're trying to sell to, they'll spend so much time and so much energy trying to get a yes out of prospect number 1 they won't even get to prospects 3 and beyond. Whereas if you just got really comfortable going fast, you might realize, maybe 1 and 2 aren't great prospects, but 4, 7, 9, and 10 are all going to sign contracts. But if you don't get comfortable with going fast and just, okay, number 1's not a fit, great. Number 2's not a fit, okay, great. Number 3, and then just realizing everything isn't a be all end all, and that the faster you go, it's better to talk to 10 people to get 4 yeses than to talk to 1. Even if you're good enough and lucky enough where you close that 1, you spend so much time that you don't even know what opportunities on the end of that list. So that's where I think that's been a big focus for me the last year or 2, especially. If like we've talked about it enough, I don't sell. Like if you want in, sweet, let's go.
Yep.
Talk about it. You're not into it. Like, okay, no big deal. On to the next one. Jay-Z.
Well, and that's where it gets really fun. We talk about brand. We talk about incoming opportunities. I'm turning stuff down right now. I mean, it is to put in that work of years and years and years and years of branding to get to the point where people are calling you to say, I want your services. One of 2 things happens. You either raise your prices to get to the point where you have less clients so that you are spending the proper amount of time, or you say no. And guess what? We're in control. And I use this word all the time, is if you're going to have the audacity to charge people for your time and your talents, and you want to build your brand to the point where you are turning stuff away, then good on you, man. But it's going to be a ton of work to get to that point. And the moment you get frustrated because you've gotten 98 no's in a row and you stop, and numbers 99 and number 100 were going to say yes, but you stopped at 98, that's where people usually stop because they get frustrated. Because I think a lot of people take it personally, and I think that's a really tough thing to kind of get over to.
Here's the dirty little secret with that too. It's okay to take it personally. Just don't let it affect you. I've taken every no extremely personally over the last 8 years, and I remember every single one of them. And then when those no's come around to be yeses 3 years later, I gotta tell you guys, it's the single greatest feeling in business you could have. It's just for you too. You don't have to verbalize it. You don't have to let them know. You don't have to let anybody know. But I'm like weirdly psycho, just quietly competitive, like internally. So everybody that says no, or if there's a contract that I should have gotten and I know I should have gotten it, and then they go through and they go with somebody else before us, I'm just like, okay, we'll see. And then every month gets closer to it, and then they actually come around, and it's like,
What's the reason? Just so everybody knows, the reason I'm looking here is because my laptop was broken last week, so I literally.
Amazing.
So everything works on my So everything works on my laptop except for the display. So the display is not working. So I have the HDMI. Hang on. I have the HDMI hooked up to the monitor that I stole out of my kids' room. So this is what I'm looking at right now to do the show today. So just keeping in line with, it wouldn't be Lunch with Adam and Ben without some sort of technical thing. So that's why I'm doing this. So Buddy Joe in the Facebook comments says, he says, Adam, how do you do? So how do you do, Adam?
Well, he just expanded on it. Adam, how do you deal with that former no going forward, which turns to a yes? It's just a yes at that point. You can't hold on to any grudge or any negative feeling. The second somebody goes from being a no to turning into a yes and becoming a client and becoming part of the family, like they're just fucking in at that point. No reservations, no holding on to anything, nothing like that. All that gets checked at the door. It's more just an internal psychological thing for me, so that going forward, as you get more no's, because you're gonna get more no's, it just makes it easier where instead of just being really upset or really annoyed or really aggravated, it just kind of turns into, okay. It basically turns every no into a not yet. And that's a lot easier to process.
So that's the hard part is when I was early on in my brand pivot 3 years ago, I would take everything personal, everything. But now I don't. Like, if you don't want to do business, if you don't want to do business together, like, good on you, dude. Like, go find somebody that's a better fit. This is what I tell my onboarding clients all the time. I had a great conversation with a couple of, actually, they were Disney executives. Talk about, I mean, it's just getting crazy. I had a couple of
names left and right this week, and I fucking love it.
I don't usually do it, but
just Disney, no big deal.
3 Disney executives called me yesterday, and we had a Zoom call. And they said, what's the next step? And I'm like, the next step is we have to make sure that we check the good guy clause. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't ever want to see something on my phone, see a caller ID on my phone, and cringe. I don't ever want to see something come up on my calendar and be like, oh, I gotta talk to Fred again. I gotta talk to Tom again. I gotta talk to this. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's taken a long time to get there, but you have to enjoy it, because here's the punchline. If you don't enjoy it, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to do it anymore. If you don't enjoy biz deving, you're not going to do it anymore. If you don't want to sell what you're selling, you're not going to do it anymore. Anyway, all right, Beth Ann, who's a big fan of the show, thank you. It's good to see you. Not everyone is your ideal. Here's a good point. Not everyone is your ideal client, but it does feel personal when you get a no. Ideal client is a really interesting thing. So ideal is a strong word. What do you feel about that? And if they feel like an ideal client when you onboard and you figure out they're not an ideal client, it's just not working, what do you do?
So there's 2 answers to that. One, I think that, and like the other thing to keep in mind, you and I are far enough into our road where it's a lot easier for us to digest that than we would have been year 1.
Yep.
So I think that's important to keep in mind. As far as the whole, I think that I'm in tune enough with what we do and how we do it and who we are. It helps when me and my number 1 dude have very, very, very similar upbringings, and we have very similar DNA and very similar wiring. So I know who we are as people. So for the most part, when I sit down with somebody, I know if they're going to be one of our people or not. So, as far as that goes, that's that's tough. And then the other thing is that you have to be honest with yourself and what you're signing up for. Like, me and you are signing up to make our living in the client services industry. And just by nature, like, no matter what, if you do everything right, you're literally signing up to have your clients' problems and headaches and tribulations be your problems and headaches and tribulations. So there's just a certain amount of shit you have to eat with that.
Yeah.
And when I catch myself getting annoyed or getting aggravated, I have to remind myself, you asked for this. You signed up for this. When you said, I'm going to run a marketing agency, that's what you're asking for.
Yeah.
So just to be very clear with yourself on that, I think that's like the big part. And then at some point, don't be afraid to fire a client. We've fired clients before. People have hired us, and like the juice just straight up isn't worth the squeeze. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot. In 6 years, I've done it twice, but you can't be afraid to do it.
Was that your fault or the client's fault, or a combination of both?
I think it's always my fault to a certain extent for not overly making expectations clear.
Yeah.
In both cases, it was just on a personal level, and it's not even usually me. They spoke and treated employees in a way that's just not acceptable, and I made it clear that that's not acceptable, and then it either kept happening or they disagreed, and I'm like, all right, we're not the people for you then.
Yep.
And nobody ever thinks that you're going to fire them and say, hey, stop giving me your money. So they're always very, very rattled when it happens. But
what was the reaction when that happened?
Shock.
Why?
They were offended. They were offended that I thought that they were so out of line as a human that I would say, you know what, keep your money.
Wow.
Because it doesn't happen very often. For the most part, any type of advertising, people will literally go to whatever length they have to keep your money and keep your spend and keep your budget. That's just not how we're going to do things here.
I'm pulling a little bit of an audible on you. I was going to drop the Zoom link in the Facebook chat to see if anybody wanted to ask a question live.
Interesting.
Right?
My man out here throwing curveballs.
See, we don't prepare for this stuff like ever. This is what makes it fun. And of course, my 5-year-old Mac is crashing on me.
It'll be the best money you ever spent. I'm telling you.
I know, I'm so terrible with it. I'm such a cheapskate when it comes to this stuff. And Siobhan's like, literally, nobody would use this more than you. I'm like, well, like always, she's right?
Spoiler alert.
I don't know if I can do this live. So when we talk about like the direct-to-consumer aspect of things, this is very high on my list in terms of everything that we do. Why is that so important, and why have people's consumption? Stupid question. We know why. How much of this is going to carry over into all the other aspects of our life after this? Well, and the problem is we don't know when this is going to end. It's coming back right now. It's not a political statement. It's simply a scientific statement. How can we do that? And how can we position ourselves to best take advantage of people's changing habits?
So here's what I think, without getting political or annoyed by any of that stuff. I think all of this stuff was going to happen naturally. I think this just accelerates it.
Yep.
Gone through everything. Like your grandpa's parents said that they would only listen to the radio and never watch TV. Our parents said they would only watch TV. They would never get news from Facebook. And then it's so on and so on and so on. My parents were so hardcore against ever putting their credit card online to buy anything ever. And that's exclusively how my dad buys Christmas presents now. So it's just the evolution of stuff and buying things direct from wherever you want to buy them. That's just, if you can't tell that was obviously the next step, you're just not paying attention. So like how much of this is going to last after this, it's hard to say, but like 20 years from now, that's going to be the only thing.
Yep.
If I was a retail spot that didn't have any kind of direct to consumer, functionality, I'd be really fucking scared right now.
Yep.
But like, it's just the evolution that happens. And we've been, if you look at even the last 10 years or the last 20 years, we've become less, any amount of friction that exists between you and a customer is a major vulnerability. Like we've seen it. And as my generation, you're seeing it now, as my generation, who's really the first generation that's kind of known both sides of that, as we're becoming the generation that's having families and buying houses and becoming the generation that's spending the most money, I think you're seeing that, So it's just one of those things where it's just here. And COVID really accelerated that because it put everybody where they have to do that. And guess what? Once somebody realizes that, like, oh, I can text in my grocery order and it's delivered to my house for an extra $6, guess what? That's the best $6 you'll spend today. And like, so like, if you think that's just going away, I feel really bad for you.
Yep, I concur. I skipped over Beth Ann's question. I apologize. When I was messing around with the Zoom, we'll have to figure that out though. If you want to join the call on Zoom, that might be a kind of a fun way to interact with us. She says, how do you expand your audience when you have saturated a local platform? That is a very interesting question, the way you worded that. I think she means leveraging social media. Like, let's say, I have to make an assumption here.
That thing is on. We should ask her what the local platform is, because I'm very curious about this.
Okay. Yeah, Beth Ann, if you could expand on that a little bit. I think what it means is a local Facebook, because she does a good job of doing Facebook Lives.
Okay.
Of doing photography. So she's a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah. I remember. Yep.
Yep. So the 9-to-5 kindergarten teacher, side hustle photography, doing Facebook Lives of how to edit, how to shoot, how to get the most out of your DSLR camera, those kind of things. I think that's the question is how do you expand your audience when you have saturated that platform?
I think the first part of it is that you probably haven't saturated it. We just haven't come up with any good new ideas recently. And the second part, I think it's just that it's innovating, and I think that when people think just the sheer massive audience that exists on these platforms, like brands that are spending millions of dollars a month haven't saturated yet. So I don't think that we've saturated it in the fact that we may have saturated a certain campaign idea or a certain stream of content, but as far as saturating the platform, I'm not 1,000,000% sure that's possible.
She confirms, yes, local Facebook.
Oh, perfect. So I would think just that. I would think, going back to like one of the pillars of stuff that we always talk about, what else does your customer need? Or what other ways can you communicate your service offering? I think like this show is a great example. Like if we did this show 10 times a week, that would saturate it. But how many other ways can we use Facebook and use Instagram to do what we want to do?
Yep.
You could write blogs. You could do a whole series of testimonials. You could do a million things. So I think that's the big thing is you got to change your frame of mind from I've saturated this platform to I've saturated this idea segment on this platform.
Okay. That's interesting. I would say the same thing. And I would also, I think the assumption of the question is possibly flawed in that you're assuming that every single one of your clients is on Facebook, or that's how they're gonna find your brand. So if you do wanna cross pollinate your brand on different platforms, Beth Ann translates very well on Facebook. That's just who she is. She can communicate properly. She engages with the audience. I've seen her Facebook Lives. What if that were an Instagram Live? What if that were a YouTube show? What if the Facebook Live were a Zoom call? So this is what we do with our show. It's a Zoom call, so we can record it to go back and put it on YouTube, just for that sort of cross-pollination. And in terms of the ideas, you don't ever need to come up with your own thought ever to create content. This goes back to our fiction versus nonfiction. This is what I pinged you with last week, is that you don't have to create a story. You don't need to do a fiction story to properly storytell on Facebook. It's simply documenting what you're already doing, comma, if you follow photography blogs or you follow other photographers that are potentially more successful than you, dive into their conversation, see what they're talking about, then simply flip on Facebook Live and said, you can start the conversation with, hey, I was reading a blog about this photographer. Here's why I agree with what she says, and here's why I disagree with what she says. That becomes your whole new content for the platforms that you're currently using. The other thing I would mention is this. If you want to use native Facebook and you have saturated that platform, or you feel as though you've saturated that platform, dig into ads, dig into Facebook dark posts. So if you feel as though you keep hitting the same consumer and the same customer base over and over and over with the same stuff, go find different customers. Go find a different segment of people. Go to Rochester, go to Binghamton, target people in Utica, target people in Watertown. I mean, if you want to charge, I have no idea what she charges. I'm just going to throw a number out there. If she charges $600 for like a graduation photo shoot, is that worth driving to Utica, an hour and 10 minutes away, to go do that? So go target and find different people. That's the advice I would give.
And to put a bow on that too, I think you hit on a really important concept there. For this to be really beneficial, you can't think of the content you're putting out as the end result or the end product. The content that you're putting out is just a part of your plan to get more fill in the blank, customers, clients, sales, whatever. So if we're not at a point where you're like where you're at now, where I'm so fucking busy, like I'm saying no to people. People are like, hey, Ben, take my money. And you're like, not right now. That's saturation. And anything short of that isn't.
Love it. Beth Ann, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please ask a follow-up question, as we'll do last call for questions on text and DMs and Facebook. Sorry we missed last week. My Siobhan was on vacation. I got the look of, you better not be reporting a podcast when we should be on the boat having a drink. So I voted for marriage over show, and that's nothing against you, my man.
Hey, priorities, I fully understand.
She's already texting me what she wants on the boat this afternoon, so it must be a heck of a day up upstate right now. So it looks like that probably answered Beth Ann's question. So what are you doing this weekend? What's fun? Let's talk about that.
I haven't got that far yet. I'm supposed to I have a lot of just work to do, not here, just things that I told people I'd help with. So I'm sure there will be beverages drank near a lake at some point. I just have to figure out when.
What's your go-to beverage for the weekend?
Well, here's the thing, man. I've been going to. I bought a case of Yingling Light because it was $12 for a case of it. And I kind of really dig that down there just because it's really light and I don't get too hammered, which is cool. And then I've been on a big Natty Light seltzer. It's the only seltzer I can drink and not feel awful after. And it's delicious. And
what flavor? What flavor?
Catalina lime mixer. Where cherry and lime become best friends.
Natty Light, you'll be happy to know that Natty Light is the 9th best selling seltzer in the United States right now.
Well, it's the #1 best tasting one, so.
I haven't tried that one. In order, I think if my memory serves me right, White Claw obviously is #1. White Claw for the first time in June of 2020 eclipsed the $1 billion sales mark in 1 month. White Claw holds 68% of all spiked seltzer sales. Truly is #2. That is, I think they hold 9%. Then it is Bud Light Seltzer because they put $140 million behind that brand. And then it's a Constellation-owned Corona Seltzer that owns 6%. 6% of the global market sales is $65 million a month. 6% of one market. It's insane what's happening in that space. And it is only going up. And where it's hurting people is in the craft beer space. There are more craft beer drinkers that are switching from their local brand or their national craft brand, a Sam Adams style or a Yingling style, to, you're the perfect example. You are the largest growth segment in the seltzer population. Because before, they've already captured all of the vodka soda drinkers. They've already captured all the tequila soda drinkers, the people that want the 100 calories and below and not feel bad that they've drank 3 or 4 of them on a weekend. You and I are the next growth category for all of these brands. It's amazing to watch.
Well, Natty Light, if you're watching, hit your boy up. Let's get into that top 3. I know some people that could help.
You have some real estate for sale influencers, what you're saying?
I don't see any logos on my shirt today.
All right, that is it. I appreciate it. We're back on the horse again. Thank you, everybody, for watching again. Questions, comments. You guys rock. The fact that you take 2 seconds out of your day to watch two guys yammer on with each other like this is incredible. And we appreciate it. Have a great weekend, everybody.
See you.
I think I killed it properly.